A judge hurled an insult at Karoline Leavitt right in the courtroom, and just minutes later, Attorney General Pam Bondi had him handcuffed. You won't believe what had just happened. Before we dive into this explosive story, comment below where you're watching from. And of course, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss out on the latest breaking stories. Karoline Leavitt walked into the courtroom, her gaze sharp, her posture commanding, an image that left no room for underestimation. At just 27, she had already made history as the youngest White House press secretary ever, and today, she was standing before the court on behalf of the Trump administration, ready to take on a massive corruption case. At the center of it all, Robert Mitchell, a wealthy developer with deep political connections, accused of secretly funneling public funds into his private projects. Watching from the bench, Judge Edward Thorton studied Leavitt with an icy stare. He knew who she was. She was no stranger to pressure. She had battled the scrutiny of both politics and the media. But this wasn't just another challenge. This was a fight for justice. And Thornton? He wasn't just any judge. He was known for his sharp tongue and unpredictable rulings. Hours earlier at the White House, Pam Bondi had given Leavitt a warning. Thornton's got something shady about him. Watch yourself around him. With that in mind, Leavitt stepped forward, placing a thick stack of documents on the plaintiff's table. The jury, the reporters, and even Mitchell, who wore a smug grin, watched her every move. Inside that stack, fraudulent invoices, suspicious transactions, a signature that didn't sit right. Then, Thornton's voice rang out, calm, but commanding. Miss Leavitt, I have to ask, why would the White House send someone as young as you? This is a courtroom, not a press conference. For a second, the courtroom fell silent. A faint chuckle escaped from Mitchell's defense attorney. Thornton continued, his deep voice carrying the weight of experience. I assume you've come prepared. This is a place of law, and I expect you to present solid arguments. He tapped his hand lightly on the bench, his gaze locking onto Leavitt, a silent reminder that he controlled this room. But Leavitt? She wasn't rattled. Resting her hand on the documents, she stood firm. Your Honor, she said, her voice cutting through the murmurs, I'm here to present the truth. Robert Mitchell embezzled millions from public funds, and I have the evidence to prove it. She flipped open a file and pulled out a marked bank statement. This financial record shows a $5 million transfer from public funds to a personal account, far exceeding the approved amount. Thornton narrowed his eyes, arms crossed, his expression unreadable. Financial records, he mused, are something this court has reviewed many times before. I hope you're prepared to explain these numbers, not just display them. A small laugh came from Mitchell's middle-aged defense attorney, his gray suit crisp, his hair neatly combed. Meanwhile, Mitchell himself sat with his hands clasped, his smirk barely faltering. Leavitt took a breath, steadying herself. She knew exactly what Thornton was doing, testing her. Your Honor, she continued, her voice gaining strength, if I may, I'll clarify. This $5 million transfer has no legitimate documentation to support it. Additionally, we have a witness confirming that Mitchell used those funds for personal gain. She held the paper up, eyes locked on Thornton. He tilted his head slightly, as if weighing her words. Witness testimony and documents, he said, his tone measured, must be carefully examined for authenticity. I assume what you're presenting is not mere speculation. His hand tapped lightly on the bench again, gaze sweeping across the room, a reminder that he was in charge. Tension in the courtroom thickened. A female juror in a navy blue jacket frowned at Thornton, as if sensing something was off. But Leavitt? She wasn't backing down. She placed a contract on the table. Your Honor, this document lists the project cost as $2 million. Yet the actual transfer? $5 million. This discrepancy is no accident, it's fraud. Thornton immediately cut in, his voice sharp. Miss Leavitt, be careful with your claims. This court doesn't tolerate reckless accusations. If you're alleging fraud, I expect concrete proof. His gavel struck lightly, the sound small yet absolute. Present more evidence, but I will not tolerate imprecision. Leavitt met his gaze head-on. She wasn't here to fold. Your Honor, she said, her voice steady yet pointed, I respect your demand for accuracy. That's why I propose the court examine these documents closely. If necessary, I am fully prepared to request an independent audit to verify their legitimacy. A polite challenge. The courtroom went dead silent. Mitchell's defense attorney frowned. That smug grin? Fading fast. Thornton leaned forward, hands pressing against the bench. You're suggesting an independent audit in my courtroom? He asked, voice low, laced with warning. I remind you, I decide what is reviewed here, Miss Leavitt. He tapped his gavel again, his stare unyielding. Proceed, but know your place. Leavitt didn't flinch. Your Honor, I understand my role perfectly, she said, her voice razor-sharp yet respectful. With your permission, I will continue to present only the truth. She pushed the documents forward, her eyes locked on Thornton. Shall we proceed? The room held its breath. The ceiling lights cast a cool glow over Leavitt's poised figure, standing firm at the plaintiff's table. Thornton? He sat there, arms crossed, his black robe barely moving as he stared her down. And then he spoke. Miss Leavitt, I'll allow you to continue. But I expect clarity and precision. Leavitt gave a slight nod. Your Honor, I appreciate your guidance, she said, her voice ringing with conviction. And I assure you, I'm here to present nothing but the truth. A faint smile, not to provoke, just to assert control. And for the first time, Thornton felt it slipping. What happened next? You won't believe the shocking twist that had this judge in handcuffs. Stay tuned for the full story. And if you haven't yet, subscribe now so you never miss an update. Head slightly, his hands gripping the edge of the defense table, his attorney shifted uncomfortably, adjusting his tie, as if trying to suppress a rising panic. Levitt continued, her voice unwavering. Your Honor, this is a recorded phone conversation between Judge Edward Thornton and Robert Mitchell, obtained legally through the Justice Department's investigation. It will reveal the nature of their agreement regarding the $3 million transfer. She pressed play. The court fell into a deafening silence as the audio crackled to life. A deep voice, unmistakably Thornton's, spoke first. Mitchell, make sure the paperwork is clean. I don't want any loose ends. Mitchell's voice followed, casual but laced with arrogance. Relax, Judge. I've handled bigger deals than this. Just sign where I marked, and you'll get your share. The sound of paper shuffling. Then Thornton's voice again, lower this time. Almost a whisper. If this ever comes back, I was never involved. Gasps rippled through the courtroom. The female juror in blue covered her mouth in shock. Reporters frantically scribbled notes, while Mitchell sat frozen, his face drained of color. Thornton's expression hardened, his fingers tightening around the edge of his bench. His usual air of control wavered for the first time. Miss Leavitt, he began, his voice dangerously low, I strongly advise you to reconsider. But before he could finish, Attorney General Pam Bondi, who had been observing quietly from the back, stood abruptly. That won't be necessary, Your Honor, she declared, her voice cutting through the chaos like a knife. Judge Edward Thornton, based on this evidence, you are hereby relieved of your duties pending a full investigation. Gasps turned into murmurs of disbelief. Two uniformed officers approached the bench. Thornton's jaw clenched, but he knew there was no way out. With a final, burning glare at Levitt, he rose from his seat, placing his hands behind his back as the officers secured the cuffs around his wrists. As he was led away, Karoline Leavitt met his gaze one last time, her expression unwavering. The courtroom doors shut behind him with a resounding thud. Silence. Then, the room erupted into chaos, journalists scrambling for quotes, spectators whispering in disbelief.